Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. It's been 2 years since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, resulting in widespread devastation and a mounting civilian death toll. Now, with seemingly no end in sight for the war, Ukraine finds itself grappling with the risk of shortages of weaponry and infantry as it continues its resistance against Russian aggression. Joining me on the show today to discuss this further is Denys Mykhailiuk. He is Chargé d'Affaires at interim of the Embassy of Ukraine in Malaysia. Denys, thank you so much for being on the show with me and joining me tonight.
It's a pleasure thank you for having me here.
So it's an important date, 2 years into this full-scale invasion, but it's been about 10 years of fighting.
Yes, actually on 19th of March it will be 10 years since the beginning of the war, which started with the attempted annexation of Crimea by Russian troops. Then they launched the war to distract international attention from the breaking of the international law. They provoked the Russian-backed separatists in our eastern part, and then even launched their direct attack with Russian forces on these territories. And low-intensity conflict was for 8 years, and on the 24th of February 2022, they launched a full-scale invasion with the aim to destroy Ukrainian statehood and ethnicity.
Okay, so what does the war look like now? I mean, 2 years down the road, where does Ukraine stand amidst this fighting?
In the beginning of the invasion, 2 years ago, almost 40% of the territories was occupied or captured by Russian invaders. But resilience of Ukrainian people was so strong, and we were able to regain half of these territories. Now it's approximately 18% of the territory occupied. It's from the beginning of 2014.
That's 1/8, you said?
1/8%, yes. But Ukraine is a huge country, actually. It's the biggest in Europe in terms of territory. It's 603,000 square kilometers, twice the size of Malaysia.
Actually, that's quite interesting. Thank you for pointing that out, because I think for many of us who might not be familiar with the geographical layout of Ukraine and also of the war, can you tell us about the front line? Because it spans 1,000 kilometers or more than.
More than that. 1,500 kilometers is active battle line, and our borders with Russian Federation and Belarus, who is their state under control, actually. It's not even an ally. It's controlled by Russian state. It's 3,500 kilometers.
Right. So how does that factor into the protracted nature of the fighting? The fact that the front line, the front battle line, is such a huge line, must require commitment and manpower to patrol and to guard and to fight back.
Exactly. Actually, we have in the forces of resilience, which is not only our armed forces, but the police, border guards, and all other who are fighting. It's more than 1 million people for quite a while already, and so we need a rotation process, because everybody in the beginning of the war was hoping that it will be much, much quicker.
Yeah.
But Russia, then their blitzkrieg, their war of attack, failed, so they turned this into a protracted war of attrition. And so we are now entering the 3rd year of this full-scale war, and it might last even longer than that. On the ground, the front line is quite stable, so we are concentrating on asymmetrical answers to Russian Federation. We are attacking their navy and have destroyed almost 30% of their Black Sea fleet. Re-establishing the trade line for Ukrainian grain going to the world markets. Russia was trying to block all our ports and failed. Russia is trying to gain control over our skies and fail as well. Just recently, a week ago, 7 Russian jets were shot down, as well as the very costly and rare reconnaissance aircraft A-50, which might cost from 300 to 500 million US dollars.
Oh, okay.
But the cost is not the most important about it. The most important that Russia had only 6 of these aircraft, and they cannot produce it. So we hope that it's the second already we have destroyed, and we hope that the less of the sophisticated weaponry they will have, the less attacks on our civilian objects will be.
So you said it's going into the third year of the war, did you not expect how protracted the fighting was going to be?
Actually, no. In the beginning, we actually believed that there will be no war. Rationally, if everybody could understood, actually, we should listen more carefully to Russians, who were promising that they will attack us, and all other countries in the world were warning as well. But you'll never believe it before it happens. And they actually wanted to destroy Ukraine in a couple of weeks. They called us the failed state, or the state 404, which is not found
page
in
not found.
yes, page not found, something like that. And I think that they have found this is the 2 longest week in history already. So now we have to fight, we have to work, we have to rebuild our capacities, we have to switch our economy into the war regime to become more sustainable, and I'm happy to say that it's already done. And actually Ukraine was quite innovative in fighting the biggest army in Europe and the biggest country in the world. We switched this war from the war of tanks and the masses of infantry into the war of drones already.
War of drones.
Yes, it's we are using these asymmetrical tools, which much cheaper than the tanks or sophisticated missiles, to stop the occupiers, to get them rid of our territory.
But talk to me about the fact that Russian forces have taken the city of Avdiivka.
It's not a city, it's a town.
It's a town, okay. So talk to me about that.
Yes,
that's
actually,
been portrayed as a Russian victory.
Russian propaganda is their most effective tool. They can portray it as a victory everything. The town of Avdiivka had before the war 40 to 50,000 inhabitants, and this town is under the siege for 10 years now. So it was the boundary of the territories seized by Russian Federation in 2014. And actually it was our outpost, the closest point to Russia. Then they attacked us on February 2022. They declared as the primary goal regaining control over the territories of Donetsk and Lugansk region, which they entered into their constitution as Russian territory first. They haven't fulfilled this goal still. But this is the sixth town they captured. It's almost destroyed to the ruble, because Russia is advancing by the artillery barrage and using of the superiority in the skies. So before the war we had, let's say, 150 jets, and Russia is still having 1,500. So it's 10 times superiority. So they just destroyed everything. There is no intact building, no intact plant. They just wiped out it. And but the ratio of the losses is very favorable for us. Russia lost 16,000 lives to take Avdiivka.
And
16,000 dead soldiers.
And Ukraine?
Our losses all in all in the war were revealed just recently by the president of Ukraine. During these 2 years we have lost 31,000 soldiers killed. Okay. It's a huge number.
It is a huge. So talk to me about the humanitarian consequences of the conflict. So yes, military losses, but also what about displaced persons, and what about civilian casualties?
The war is in our territory. That's why all these damages are on Ukraine. Since the beginning of the war, we had 8.5 million displaced people. Most of them were internally displaced or went to the western neighbors of ours. As of now, it's approximately from 4 to 6 million people in Europe. We also estimate the people who were forcefully displaced to Russian territory as 2.4 million, and several 100,000 kids among them. Russia is pretending that it was done voluntary, but the only choice of these people had is to die in the bombardment or go to Russia. They were deprived of their documents, and many of them has returned via other countries. And we are now have the Return Ukrainian Kids initiative, which we want Malaysia to join as well. This is the initiative of returning kids who are taken hostage in Russian Federation Russia has launched the swift adaptation program, and they put Ukrainian kids into Russian families. And that's why Mr. Putin got his subpoena from International Criminal Court as a war criminal.
Yeah. Can I ask you whether public attitudes have changed now? So at the start of the war, maybe, you know, as you said, should have taken Russia seriously for their threats. But now that we're 2 years into the fighting, how have public attitudes changed about the war?
You know, we have these polls, and before the second anniversary of the full-scale invasion, where was a poll made by by Ukrainian sociological group Rating, and I have some data with me. So 85% of Ukrainians believes that we will win and prevail in this war. The feeling they have about their own country is mostly pride, but we also have the sadness and fear, quite significant. So the mood of Ukrainians is quite optimistic, but we realize that this war will not end in 2 weeks or 2 months or maybe even 2 years. So we have to fight, hold fast, and work very hard.
Okay. What are the consequences for Ukraine if the war continues? At this point, it looks like it's indefinitely at this point in time. So in terms of weaponry shortage, in terms of infantry shortage, there's been talk about the need to expand the draft to lower the conscription age to 25 from the current 27. How is the Ukrainian government thinking about balancing the need for, you know, coercion to join the army versus persuasion to fight for the country?
Actually, this is already high time to do that, because you know, people who came to the army in the beginning of the invasion, they are in the trenches for more than 2 years now.
Must be tired.
Yes, they are not only tired, and there is some rotation between them, between those who are on the battle line and those who are in relatively safe areas. But actually, according to the law, everyone on this age have to participate. The problem is not of coercion and persuasion. The problem is that we should decide how to do this draft not to damage our economy even more, because these million people who are in the Nadi, they don't produce anything. They even consume a lot of resources. And our economy has lost 35% since the beginning of the war. It's a huge number. And those who are working in the, not conscripted and working in the economy, they are supporting this army. You know, all our military expenses are done only by us, not by our supporters and our allies. The financial aid we are given by our sponsors, let's say so, it is going to the social needs, to pensions, to the salaries, and the more people working, the more sustainable our army is. But this will be resolved.
Why is that? Why make that separation between aid for Ukraine to support only the social systems and not to aid the military?
It makes easier to the countries to donate money, because they are giving money for the humanitarian reasons, not for killing people, because it's the war, even the war of resistance, the just one, it's anyways the killing, and it might be sensible for many people. So and we are supported by democracies, and these democracies are very much dependent on what their voters think. It's not like in Russia, they can squeeze their resources and just force everybody to go into the army. It's we have to persuade. We are actually fighting for freedom and for. It's not the fighting for ethnicity or for some separation. It's fighting to decide how we want to live. They want to live in a free country, and we want people to be attracted to this free country. And that is the main. We are fighting for our dream to live better, to decide how we should live, and this is what makes Russians even more angry, because for them it's some kind of colonial war. They are fighting the rebellious province in their minds.
Can I talk to you about the support, the difference between the support from 2 years ago and now? Because we see past 2 years, US has been the biggest provider of aid to Ukraine by quite
second biggest.
Second biggest, okay. So right now we have potential of billions of American aid trapped in a political deadlock in Capitol Hill, and public support from America over assisting Ukraine appears to be waning. So how do you factor that into the fact that your weaponry is declining, or you're reducing, you need more weapons, you need more military aid? How do you factor in the declining U.S. support?
Actually, it's not a declining U.S. support, and we have bipartisan support in America, and I'm pretty much sure it will be given to Ukraine as well as to other countries. This is not about us. It's about their political fight between themselves. So they are fighting for the place on in the White House. It's there.
You think it's political?
It's 100 political. It's Mr. Trump is fighting against Mr. Biden, and they just deadlock for not only for our aid. The whole American government will be shut down on the 8th of March due to this process. We have financial support from Europe. Just on the 1st of February, they passed the bill giving us 54 billion euros, as well as we signed an agreements for the military guarantees, which are actually not security guarantees, but per se, but with 6 countries. It's Great Britain, Germany, France, Italy, Canada. I have forgotten one. Yes, but it's a process. We are in negotiations with 20 plus countries. Oh, Denmark.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
With Denmark, and actually Denmark is Europe is having shortage of the weapons themselves, so the money comes, but to produce weapons it takes time, and we are building our own capacities and joint ventures with our European partners, as well as with other countries. Japan, for example, is one of our biggest donors. We are very thankful for Australia, for New Zealand, so it's not only Europe. Okay. It's so-called Ramstein format. It's 50 plus countries. I'm not giving this exact figure because it's a monthly basis, and every month different quantity comes.
So you're saying that you're not just dependent on the US, there are other
Exactly, but the problem with the American support is that America has ready stocks of weapons. So if they will not give...
it would be immediate,
Exactly. Right? So they are, with other countries we have to produce it, and then it goes to, or we should find other sources on other parts of the world, maybe of the countries of the global south, and if any countries have obsolete weaponry they want to replace with something new, we are very welcome to buy them.
I want to come to the support from other countries and from Europe as well, but I do want to just focus very quickly on the US. If Trump wins come November, what would a Trump in the White House mean for Ukraine?
It's the choice of American people, and we will be working closely with any American president who the Americans will choose for themselves. We already been with the Trump administration for 4 years, and Trump was the first American president who gave Ukraine lethal weapons. So the only problem with Mr. Trump, he is completely unpredictable. So you'll never know.
Okay. What about his relationship with Russia?
He is very business-oriented person. So he wants, he promises that he will solve this war in one day. I think it will be a great disappointment for him.
Okay, all right. I do want to ask you, well, we're still looking at the U.S. political mood. I'm not sure whether you caught the Tucker Carlson interview with President Vladimir Putin that was released recently. It was a 2-hour interview, and I just want to ask you about some comments that was made by Putin. He claimed that, if I were to quote him, sooner or later the war will end in agreement. So what does that speak to you, the fact that maybe Russia is now ready for dialogue or ready to negotiate? Does that...
Russia always ready for dialogue. If you accept all their demands, they're always ready for dialogue. It's the Russian tradition of the negotiations. They want from you to surrender and obey. That's it. It seems to me it was Bismarck, the Chancellor of Germany in the 19th century, who told that the agreements with Russia were less than the paper you write them on. So this interview with Mr. Carlson, yes, it was a success for both of them. One was able to present his views to the 1 billion people, and another one just became a billionaire or millionaire. I don't know how much money he raised, but it was about nothing new for us.
Okay, but on that note, just to elaborate on that, what do you think Putin got from that Tucker Carlson interview? benefit did he get from doing that interview?
I don't know exactly what was his goal, but I think he wanted to address the West, I haven't survived all 2 hours of this interview.
Very few of us have.
Yes, but I've made several attempts. He looked very offended that he is rejected by the West. So for everybody here on the South perceived Russia and Mr. Putin as the person who is fighting against West, and it seems to me that he looked like a person who is fighting for his place on the Western table.
Okay, maybe a desire to speak to Americans
exactly.
Directly. You mentioned that you're not surprised that Russia is willing to negotiate, but on their terms. Do you see a diplomatic way out of the war?
Right now, there is no room for negotiations because for us, we are not fighting only for territories or for our allies, which we literally do, but we are supported by other countries because they are fighting for international law and for the world which is governed by law and rules. And if we cannot surrender, we cannot reward aggressor, because it will mean only that after reinforcement they will come back. And for Russian Federation, especially now, they already quite frank with everybody. They say that there are no Ukrainian government, there is no Ukrainian state, there is no Ukrainian ethnicity, and we would be happy to expel everyone who considers himself Ukrainian from Ukraine and occupy this territory. This is an empire and an imperialistic rule. They tried to do that during 19th century, then during the Soviet rule, and now it's another attempt.
Can I ask you what the re-emergence of war in Europe has taught the world about the new global order? I mean, what is at stake
Russia
here?
succeeded in breaking international law. So we have to reinvent international law. And actually, the initiative of the President Zelensky, which was articulated on the G20 summit in Jakarta about the Ukrainian peace formula, is the framework for every country to participate in the framing, in discussing how the world order after this war will look like. We hope that the Peace Formula Summit will be held in Switzerland anytime soon, maybe March, maybe later in this spring. And we encourage, we will be inviting leaders of the world, of every country to participate and to choose one of the 10 points of the peace formula to participate and to discuss, not only one, but at least one. And I think for Malaysia it might be interesting as well because it's implementation of UN Charter, it's the non-proliferation, it's global food security and global nuclear security. So there are lots of topics every country can find useful to be part of.
Right. I do want to ask you whether you know how Russians feel about the war. I mean, beyond the propaganda and the headlines and the, calls for victory and shouts of confidence, do you know what's happening with Russia?
We don't know what's happening with them because there is no pull in the highly suppressive and repressionist society. But I'm pretty much sure that under this optimistic and support of the government, there are some signs of different thinking, of incontent. We had an opportunity to see that then the alternative candidate was tried to be registered for the presidential elections in Russia, and there were lines of people who were signed his support, and his only difference from the propaganda was that he was not supporting the war. So I'm confident that Russians are not happy with what is going on, especially those who are educated, who live in big cities, because the life of the people in the depressed, remote areas hasn't changed much.
Okay, in the final couple minutes we have left, I do want to know, looking ahead, what would be the key priorities for Ukraine in navigating what seems to be quite an uncertain future for this conflict?
For the next year, we will be holding grounds and we will be working with international partners within the framework of the peace formula, and as well as signing the security guarantees agreements. We have signed 6 already. We hope we will have more of them. Our final goals is to join NATO, because it's the nuclear umbrella which makes impossible to Russian Federation further aggression.
Thank you for being on the show with me. I appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.